G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and in this video we're going to be drawing fat people. Hooray! Controversy! Not really. The reason I've actually been looking forward to doing this tutorial is because drawing someone who is fat, it's kind of like a feature that brings out an aspect of personality, or it's like this accentuation on a character that really just kind of brings out a character. It's kind of like adding a mustache to a cowboy that makes them a cowboy, or it's like adding wrinkles to an old person, or it's just a defining feature that adds a lot of richness to the visual quality of a character. And so we're going to go and look through the different variants of fat people, from chubby to obese, and the difference in how I would approach drawing someone in a more comic style to someone in a cartoon style. So jumping straight into it, I'm going to do the same thing that we did in the wrinkles tutorial in looking at briefly physically how the fat folds around our body. Now again, I'm not an expert and I'll always preface that, but it's good to have a bit of a rough understanding as to how these things work physically. It's not just drawing more body mass, but it's having something of an understanding as to how these extra parts on the body, because when you're fat, it's extra fat. This is weight that's pulling skin down, and they gather in areas and weigh down in areas, and some areas are highly affected, some areas actually aren't affected. So it's important to have an understanding as to how that happens. So the first thing that we're going to look at is where the skin hangs from. Now, when I say where it hangs from, these are areas where the fat does not gather and the skin remains pretty much the same as it would be on someone of a normal size. So in this green color, I'm going to go through and I'm just going to highlight areas that the skin is not filled with a lot of fat. It will, I mean, in very fat people, all of the skin holds more fat than people who aren't as fat. But in general, the top of the head is a very obvious one. The shoulders is another. Sorry, that more towards the top of the shoulders. The sides start to gather a bit, so we don't go there. The elbows and the wrists. So, I mean, of course, like I said, they will be thicker because it does hold fat, but in general, it doesn't gather there as much as it does in other areas. In and the bottom side of the hips. Now, the reason why this is one is, frankly, because we wear pants. If we didn't wear pants, we'd probably, I don't know, maybe the way the abdominal muscles hold together, it might still gather that way, but we always wear pants. And so because of that, the fat kind of folds over here. So when someone's really fat, you'll notice that they'll have a bulge, but it'll tuck over and it will always come back to the waist. So even though the waist will expand, this is an area where the skin always kind of is more attached to the body. And the knees, like I said, they are expanded. They are in general chubbier, but just not as gathered. So the next thing we're going to be looking at is where the fat bulges. So in this blue color, I'm going to go through and highlight areas where I tend to demonstrate the fat gathering. So if someone's gained a lot of weight or is quite overweight, the fat will kind of pocket in places. And these are places where, when I say bulges, it kind of weighs down the skin and it holds a shape, right? So it doesn't necessarily, how do I explain it? It doesn't necessarily fold, or it's not like flabby or squishy. It's actually fairly firm, unless it's like massively, massively fat. But in general, the bottom of the face, so I won't do that. That looks like a beard. But in blue, I want to show a few things. I want to show how the face kind of expands around the chin and the jawline, and then it also has a separate area around the neckline. So there are two areas there. One is the jawline, right? So we get a bit thicker on the sides here where the cheeks are weighed down, and we get fatter areas in the lower cheeks. And the other is the neck. the neck builds up a lot of fat and we get that really big double chin look. So there's kind of like 2 layers of areas that gather fat there. One is this area here, but I'm not going to do that because it looks like a beard. And the other is this area here where you get the big double chin. And where that's how people have a double chin, is because they have fat gathering here, then it kind of tucks in, and then fat is kind of layered up at the top there as well. And so that, you know, in essence is cheek fat, but it's just because it's weighted down, it's pulled down there. So the next area are the boobs, and that's a pretty obvious one. Now, when they're pulled down, they're kind of pulled down and to the sides because it kind of makes room for, when someone's fat, makes room for the belly. So the boobs kind of tuck out like this. They kind of fall out and the nipples are out to the side like that. Okay, so it falls down there, and I'd almost put a bit of green under there because it always kind of comes back up and tucks there, but then we have it, the fat that folds out and is weighed down there. Then in general we have bulges in the arms. It kind of folds over on top of this elbow area, and that's why I made the elbow green for where the skin hangs from, because the fat will tuck over like this, and then it will get the elbow, and then we'll get that sort of, it's almost like a double chin, but the elbow, it's like we get that layer. Then if you, I mean, please don't run up to any random fat people and feel them, just so you can know what I'm talking about. But I would guess that if you went up to a random fat person and felt their elbow, you would feel the bone of their elbow, whereas you'd have a hard time feeling the bone in their arm. So the bone is there, like the fat gathers and then folds into, and then we see the elbow there. So I'll delete that blue bit because it's not meant to be blue. And then we get the bulges again in the arms. And then the chub kind of goes back to the fingers. So same thing here. Kind of gathers like that. We have the bum kind of comes out. We have a nice big fat pocket in the crotch that tends to build up. I love talking about these topics. It's like there's no way to do a boob tutorial or a fat tutorial or wrinkle tutorial without feeling like you're being insulting to anyone who has boobs or fat or wrinkles, you know. But I mean, we're all humans with anatomy, and if we're drawing this stuff, we need to be able to talk about it. So we have bulges in the legs, kind of tucks on over the knee, and then we have that fold into, and then we kind of get the sort of cankled look. And so that's where the fat expands. So you can see that there's a lot more area when someone's quite overweight. There's a lot more areas where the fat bulges and gathers and pockets than where it gathers. Now, it's not that accurate, and the proportions are a bit off because I guess I've been conservative and stuck to this tall male bone structure or something like that. I guess because I'm sticking with the colors, but this is just a rough guide. We're not going to get into too much detail here. And next we're going to outline where the folds gather. So where we outlined where the fat bulges, this is where everything pockets and it's quite firm and a bit more solid because everything holds its larger shape. But where the folds gather is where there's an excess of skin, but the skin is not stretched, because it's not holding the fat and it's not resting on bone. So, for instance, where we have the elbows, the top of the head, the shoulders, and the waist, that's where the skin hangs from, and it's not it's stretched in a way that the bulges kind of come out from there. Whereas where the folds gather, where we have an excess of skin and it's not being stretched. And so this includes places like the underside of the neck. So I'd outline, here, this is where a fold gathers. The back of the head is one I'd point out. I don't know if you've ever seen like a fat bald bikie or whatever, but you'll notice that they have that kind of groove. They're like these layers at the back of their head. I just picture a lot of people from this tutorial going out and watching fat people now. There's nothing wrong with that, I guess. Just ask their permission. It is for my art, my friend. Oh, yes. Go on. Okay, here is another area. Here under the belly. It's like on the side. everything kind of gathers, because as you can see, the belly is weighed down, right? That's where everything kind of pulls out. But under here, it's all a bit loosey-goosey because the skin's stretched out here and it's stretched out here in the boobs, but under the arms, it's a bit more rolly than that. That looked a bit, yeah, a bit more like that. It's a bit more gathered. So I'll do the same thing for the elbows. And the knees. In general, it's actually a firmer look than you might guess. Drawing someone who's quite overweight, you'll notice there's almost this comical look about their gut. It's like this big beer gut. Not everything is quite flabby. When someone's really flabby, that's actually from having lost a lot of weight because all the excess skin is there and the skin is just hanging. But we're going to be drawing people who are genuinely fat. Hooray! So the next thing we're going to be looking at is the difference in extremes between someone chubby, overweight, and obese. So this is our character base, and this is like a very sort of, this is an ideal physique, right? So this is like the construction lines of a body with pretty much no body fat. Okay, so we're going to go in here, and I'm not going to draw all the details, but I just want to outline the ways that I would approach adding weight and fat to someone with this body type. So the first thing I do, and you know when like someone's lost weight and they don't necessarily look too much different, but one of the first places people notice someone's lost weight is the face. And the first places people lose weight is here on the jawline and here on the neck. That stands to reason that the first place people gain weight are here along the jawline and along the neck. So when we're drawing someone chubby, we don't really overdo that. We just kind of want to tuck it out. And something that I keep in mind is to think of 3 separate areas. We have the chin and we have the bottom sides of the cheeks. So the chin doesn't gather too much fat. We draw a line there because that holds the chin shape. But then, so like let's say we have the chin here, I draw the cheeks kind of coming out like that, just a bit below the chin, so it looks like it's just kind of weighted down and a little bit chubbier. So if I'm drawing someone chubby, I really don't need to do much more than that. And that's basically it for the face. Like I don't really, the face can be exactly the same. You know, you can do your hero's face and the glasses or whatever features they have. But if you do that for the chin, they'll look a bit chubbier. For the neck, don't do a straight neck down. The back can be the same, just like that, but the front, just kind of dip it under. Instead of going down like that, you kind of dip it under because it's just holding a little bit more of a firm shape. So the shoulders are the same because the fat doesn't gather there, it hangs from there. Now when drawing fat on arms, one of the quickest way to signify that someone has fatter arms is to add kind of a pocket of fat at the back. It's really simple, you just kind of do that. And rather than defining the shoulder like that, you just kind of work around it. Just have like that really loose sort of look. Right. We don't want to make it too big because he might just look muscly. And we don't want that because we're drawing fat people. Only fat people. So we're going to drawing the boob, and we don't want to go too crazy. We just want a little bit of boob there. So we just kind of want to have a boob line. And we're not going to be ridiculous. We're just doing someone who's a bit chubby. And we just want a bit of a belly. So we'll bring it out to there. And they've just kind of had a little too much pizza for the last year and a half. Nothing ridiculous. This is a fairly common physique. The elbow. And then everything else is fairly much the same. The thighs tend to be quite a bit larger and the butt pops out a bit. So we have the thighs kind of pop out. And that's when people who like are overweight kind of get the chafing between their legs because their thighs are a bit large. And then we get that sort of fat pocket. So if I zoom out there, you can see how very quickly that easily communicates someone who is chubby. They're not like fat, you wouldn't look at them and say, oh man, what a fat fatty. You'd just be like, oh, a bit out of shape, nothing wrong with that. Okay, so going along here to our overweight person. Zoom into 400 again. So we're doing the same thing, but we're just adding a little bit more extremeness to this. So we draw our chin, and we follow the same chin line. So you can see that where I draw the chin here, it follows the bone structure. It's still on the bone of the chin. But now I bring the fat out and I kind of tuck it out around the chin like that. Because it kind of is weighed down. The neck is pulled down a bit and we start getting the bulging at the back. The shoulders, the top of the shoulders, just out from the neck, are still hanging from there. That's where the skin hangs. The collarbone wouldn't be as visible, but just mentioning that. So the boobs are a bit more noticeable now. They kind of sag. We get that sort of pulled down look. And we also start to get a continuous line across. So rather than having two separate boobs, we kind of join them together a bit. And this here is where, remember how I mentioned in this previous picture how I have that little green area up here. We hang from there, so we don't go straight out. We kind of pretend that the whole gut is like one big boob. I'm sorry. Let's get back to this. You all love my videos for my high amount of maturity and integrity on these subjects of such difficult nature to talk about. I don't even know what I'm saying now. Okay, so now we start adding folds. So you can see here that we have little bulges where the folds would be, but now they're starting to be quite flabby because there's a lot more skin, so the folds are a little more extreme. So we start to have a bit more show up, right? So here, there's less skin being stretched, whereas here, where the belly's quite large, there's also a large amount of skin over here, but it's not just out there like the belly is. So this time it starts folding like that. I'm going to pull this over so it comes over like that. And what starts to happen is the belly starts to cover up this bottom area so that the legs kind of start behind where you'd normally see the waistline. Oops. So we'll make the thighs nice and large. We'll start to add a few folds into the here. Make sure that we come back in for the knee. Add a few little lumps just to show that there are kind of lumps holding the skin. Make sure that we don't define too much. Everything's kind of marshmallowy and thick. And there we go. In general, I think that gets the gist across. So we can see, if I hide my construction lines, you can see this is a unhealthy step in the direction that this is heading down. So we get that overweight sort of look. And now we're going to have a bit more fun and just kind of go nuts. There, that's 40%, not 400. Okay, so our last one in this example, we're going to go as much as we can and still keep it realistic. And this can be quite difficult. To do this properly, to do someone really obese in a not comical style, you really kind of, you've got to have a fair understanding as to how things work physically. You need to kind of feel it as you draw it. Like, it's almost like in your mind you're kind of calculating or feeling how this body sags, how the fat works and folds, and how everything would sit. So not only do you have to kind of know how to observe that stuff in things, you kind of got to have an understanding of shape and form and how, like, it's one thing to draw it in this pose, it's another thing to know how things will fold differently when they're sitting down or in different poses. So if I go nuts here, I'll draw the chin. It's a little further away from the bone structure because we're going to be really filling up this dude with fat. So the skin's really hanging out there, and we have this double chin just really out there. So where the in this previous picture where the skin hangs from. The skin still hangs from there, but we're just gonna sit it out and make it a bit kind of more round. So even though it still hangs from there, it's just kind of puffier. Okay. So the boobs are now so full and large that they start to really just sag like this. The arms have got to be really large. Things start to push against each other. So you'll notice that there's almost no room to fit in the arms because the boobs have already pushed out so far. And that's kind of how it all starts looking. So here, and you'll notice how far things are away from my initial construction lines. And if you start doing construction lines for a fat person, you just kind of, you draw your stick figure, you draw your basic skeleton, and then you add construction lines for what I'm doing now before you do your full lines. You wouldn't do these as your construction lines for a fat person, you'd do like fat person construction lines. Anyways, so we've got the belly coming down like this, and you see how low it hangs. This is a really kind of, we've got like a lot of skin here, a lot of fat hanging down. I think I was a bit too conservative with the arm here, so I'm going to delete that, and I'm just going to really bring it out and tuck it under so you can see it fold over the elbow, and you see how that kind of folds over and just sits on top of the elbow, and then we bring it out again for the hand. And then here, you don't even see the crotch. This is going to be really mean of me to say, but I don't understand physically how fat people have sex. I don't mean that to sound awful, but like I can't imagine how that happened. I feel like a terrible person for having said that, and I hope that nobody has watched 22 minutes into my video. Anyways, so the fat at this point really just pushes against each other. Everything's really kind of crowded and searching for room. Now, I didn't do this leg very well because it's kind of got a bulge at the bottom, so I've got to have it way down, and it's got to tuck in under that. So I've got to, like this, kind of like we did for that elbow, because then we have it sort of bulging out again. So when I zoom out and hide my construction lines, I think that belly's a little bit ridiculous. So I'm going to bring that in. Ugh, went a bit too far with that one. So I'll bring my construction lines back, and I'll just bring that in a bit. Ugh. And I think that'll do. Hide my construction lines. Yeah, look, that works. It's not like fantastic, but as an overlay to our original, you know, these are all kind of the same sort of 0% body fat thing. And now when we add this, all of a sudden it's like they're wearing kind of fat suits. I could probably bring out the hips a bit more over here. So I might just do that because I don't want to not be, oops, do a decent job or misrepresent what I'm trying to communicate. So I just kind of bring that out. Okay, and I feel pretty decent about that. And everything kind of hangs forward, except for in the bottom half. The butt should always kind of pop out a bit. Should also be a bit of gathering at the back of the head, like where the neck meets the back. Okay, so that is how I would convey a transition between chubby, overweight, and obese, and we're following these general rules of where the skin hangs from, where the fat bulges, and where the folds gather. And the last thing I wanted to look at was how I would approach drawing a fat person in a comparison between two styles. So I'm going to bring over here my comic obese person, and over here I'm going to draw a cartoon style obese person. So first thing I do, as you know, is the construction work. So I grab my construction line and I draw my skeleton, the head, and for a cartoon we have a lot more fun with this. So rather than being really accurate to proportions, I like to just kind of do the construction lines of like a really big belly. And let's face it, in most cartoons that we watch where there's a fat person, they're kind of jolly. They're generally quite fun, bouncy, jolly characters. That's kind of what it accentuates, like Father Christmas sort of thing. Now, I draw my middle construction line to show where it's facing and my belt line. Now, I draw my belt line here. Rather than in most construction, as you can see, if I come across here, the line I draw is the chest line. When I draw fat people, I draw the middle line as the belt line, because I tend to find that's more of a better anchor point to go off of. Now, I draw a really high belt line because I think it's really comical to have that and then to really have little legs that are further out. So when I draw someone really fat, and I'm going to expand this out so you can kind of compare them, I really enjoy drawing fat little legs that are further out, little stumpy legs. Even shorter than that, actually. Like, it's just fun. This is like for massively obese people. I hate the word obese. It's such a shitty word. Probably shouldn't say that on this channel, because shitty is not a good word either. Okay, so with arms, I like to have the arms start out kind of big, like this, and then kind of taper off till they get to the wrist. And then I have a little hand. Like that. So I actually don't like how I did the construction of the head because it feels too normal. What I generally do is a bit more of a warped construction like this. So if I were to do a fat person, I would actually generally do the body first, and the head would be a little more like this. That sort of weighted down look. And if I were to add characteristics to this character, I'd probably widen him out a bit because we're going kind of cartoony obese here. I'll lock that and I'll go in and do my line work. And if I were to improvise creating a character out of this, let's have a bit of fun. So I'll make a nice big bulbous nose. I'll give him a mustache. And I'll give him a smiley face. And to draw someone with a smile when they have a mustache, you kind of just tuck the cheek up like this, and then you have the cheek come up over the eye, so they look happy. Oops, I should probably show you the mustache. That doesn't look very good, does it? Maybe I should not colour in the mustache. That'll be better. Okay, so I draw the bottom of the neck. Might add another line for good measure. You don't really have to do folds and details like that when you're doing a cartoon. It's more like if you feel like it adds to it. Add my ear and hair. Okay, so you can see already that's a really jolly fat person face. You know, you got the lovely rosy bulgy cheeks and a big bulbous nose, and the whole face just looks really friendly. Okay, and so I like to kind of bring out and add my little boobs. And generally I like to kind of draw that underline connecting them both like that. And then I always like to have a little belt just to really signify that, hey, this is where the waistline is, even though it's ridiculously high and no one's crotch and midsection would be that big. Please don't send me pictures and the links in the comments to prove me wrong. But you really just, I love that sort of really stumpy, waddly look. It's just so cute. So I think that leg was a bit too low. So I've brought it up a bit, and I'll bring this one down a little bit. There we go. And then we draw the arm. So I should add a shirt. And I want to add a little tie, because I think that'll be fun. That'll look cute. So I'm going to erase this middle bit. And just have this little tie. Have his shirt come down. And the key to drawing fat people's hands is just to remember that it's like in the way that the fat gathers over the elbow and tucks in under. Think of that with every finger, but that's in the more detailed version. So for a cartoon version, you just really want to make everything just really bulbousy and chubby and cute and little stumpy fingers. And so that is how I would draw a ridiculously cartoony overweight person. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay classy. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy my videos. You can download the reference files from this tutorial by clicking the link in the description. And remember to share any art, animation, or game you make on Newgrounds.com. Until next time, see you later.